Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor here. Today we're going to give you another BOLO item here. It's something that you can sell across the board on many different sites. It's something you could RA again. It's something that you could wholesale, vintage as well. It's coloring books. Adult coloring books are really hot right now if you weren't aware. Vintage ones have been rising in price, so there's a bunch of different ones that you can get, tie-ins and movie-related, TV-related, and again, as I said, adult ones as well are selling really well. We're going to cut over to the screen right now, and we're going to just show you the world of coloring books. So here we are. This is coloring books. Unfortunately, they have this one turned wrong, but either way, this is a fairly rare one. This is the psychedelic movement. It's the history of it. It's a very odd one. I have not seen this one before. There are some other ones from the psychedelic era. Those seem to be some of the highest priced ones that I've ever seen. The psychedelic one seems to be the ones that sell the most for the highest amount of money, not something you're going to find. So this is probably like the holy grail of coloring books. So almost $400. This was a bin, so that price obviously doesn't reflect the actual selling price. Now here's another one. This is Keith Haring. Now he was an artist. He did a lot of pop things back in the 80s. There's a bunch of his books out there, so it's not just this specific one. They're all this style of artwork. Sometimes you can run into them and they're actually autographed. Really kind of bizarre stuff here. They do go very, very well. He actually had like art gallery shows and things along that line as well too. $275 for this one. Now the next one here is a Salfield. Now that's one of the main companies. Salfield and Whitman were the two main companies that made most of the actual coloring books that you will run across that are vintage 70s or before. At least from my personal experience of what I run into. This is Wally Walrus. This is a comic book character. It has Roman numerals as well. I'll touch on those in another video because I've had several people say that it's not taught in school anymore. So if you're unaware of how to read Roman numerals, I'll throw that in another one. But that's key to a lot of the collectibles that I sell. Roman numerals are on pretty much anything. So this one went for $210. Next one, another vintage Sectars. Now this is a scarcer toy line. It was a cartoon series as well. It's a Marvel book. It's a giant. Now, there's several sizes of coloring books. The best ones are the ones that are large, like the size of a Life magazine. Those are the ones that are usually the best ones, and you can afford to invest a little more money into. The standard magazine size coloring books are about the average one you will find. There are some smaller ones as well, too, that can be collectible. There's some promotional ones. Usually the smaller ones, from my personal experience as well, are promotional ones that were given away just because it was cheaper for them instead of giving away a whole full-size coloring book. Next one is the story of Anheuser-Busch. It's the Clydesdales. In 1976 was the bicentennial. Everybody and their uncle actually made coloring books for them. Coca-Cola, Pepsi. There's soda-related ones, bicentennial, city ones across the board. So one of the biggest years that I find the most coloring books in is from 1976. So just FYI. I know there's a bunch from the 60s, but the average one from the 60s isn't going to show up as commonly or as often as, say, a 1976 one. Just, again, personal experience on that one. $127 on this one. Now, this one here is an adult one. These are popping up all over the place, and I mean all over the place. RA ones on these as well. Walmart sells a bunch of adult ones. So does Rite Aid and all the typical places you'd get RA items at. I always check out the cheapo books and magazine sections as well, coloring books as well too, because that's really one of the items that you can flip and do RA on as well too. Perfect example here. Had 3 of them, $98 they sold this one for. Now sometimes it's the artist and the person who actually does them as well too. Renee Strauss, her name does show up. I don't know all the names on these. The adult ones though, if they're cheap, $1 or less, I'll usually take a shot at them no matter what, because I almost always sell the coloring books fairly well and fairly quickly. I've got a few here now that I haven't listed as of yet. So now the next one here, now this is a lot. There's actually a coloring book and an activity book in here, as well as games, puzzles, and things like that. Now they did that as well too. This is from Dune. So again, movie tie-ins are good, horror related, sci-fi, superheroes, any of that stuff. Disney, of course, Court of Thrones and Roses. A lot of these have tie-ins as well. Sarah Maas, now I've talked about her in some of my other videos. A lot of the items I talk about have cross-category interests. So this is why, because they did other things besides say, just writing a book or just starring in something. A lot of people actually produced items related to their shows as well, too. Their books or the things that they actually push. This one went for $76.51. Shogun Warrior, I remember this when this was on. I remember the toys. They had the giant Shogun Warriors. I love those things. I was a big fan of the Japanese wave that came in the 70s and 80s. I know they were already coming in back in the 60s and 50s with some of the robots and things, but they weren't mainstream to the extent that they were in, say, the 70s and 80s when Takari and all these other companies started coming over. Microman, Shogun Warrior, even the Godzilla lines were tied in with Shogun. And then you've got Micronauts, which tied into Marvel Comics, GoBots, and the whole works. So, you know, G-Force was another one that I remember from TV shows as well, too. So, any of these are good. $64. The better ones are the ones that are not colored in. You know, I'll buy the ones that are colored in if it's the right topic. I have a Munsters one, for example, from the TV show The Munsters right now, as well as some Barbies and some other ones. The Munsters one's colored in, so they will go for less than a non-colored in book. So let's say a colored in version I might get 24. The non-colored in, the untouched book might go for 60 or 70. So they still will sell. Don't just get random ones that are colored in. If it's a hot one or a hot topic and the toys sell very well, I always buy the coloring book, just FYI. If the TV show was something that wasn't on very long, it's a scarcer item, I'll buy those as well too. Average price is $1 or less for most coloring books is what I pay for them. Another reason why I mess with them because I get them really cheap and they flip very well. Now the next one here is an adult one. 43 of these sold for $57.38. This should bunk it right here. Adult ones sell very well. They sell repeatedly. They sell on many sites. 4 or 5 sites you should be able to easily sell coloring books. Now I've talked about other items like this, the paper doll books. These are all in the same category. It's a one trip. So when I go sourcing someplace, I know what's in that place. I know what I want to look for. So you find something new in there, you expand out and you look for that type of item online and find comps and things and see where you're running with those. I ran into these a year or two ago, this kind of item. A lot of people I know mess with these, so, you know, it's something that will get you some good money. Even the cheaper books can sell well, as I said. So, wholesale deal, you might be able to get a whole bunch of these for 50 cents a piece. Maybe not this particular title, but even some of the cheaper titles, 50 cents a piece, dollar in fees and such forth. You can get $3 a pop. You're buying them wholesale. You buy 1,000 of them. You know, that's $3,000 in flips. Mind you, it's going to take time to sell that much quantity, but if you're on 4, 5, 6 sites, or you have some interest in doing MFBA or something, you've got a good in on them. These are tied into the book category, so you should be ungated on most of these items, like the paper dolls and the actual coloring books. Just my personal experience on those. Most people I know can sell these items on Amazon. FBA as well too, so you'll have to bag them. I bag all this kind of stuff if I send something in. It's sealed in plastic before it's shipped off. FYI, unless they're coming straight from, say, a wholesaler, then they may have them sleeved already or something, or they'll show up in pallets and they'll be pulled from one specific area, and you won't have to worry about bagging them. So just FYI. Next one, unicorns and dragons. Now, some of these are, again, by specific people. Selena Finetch. It not necessarily matters the person, but the subject. Now, unicorns and dragons are popular, so, again, these type of items will sell. Roughly $34. Again, you're not going to make a fortune. There's very few that go for over $100. There are some of the scarcer ones that average price is $150 to $2, but the average I sell a coloring book for is around $20 to, say, $75. In that range is where I sell most of them. Again, you pay nothing for them, so you're making a $15 profit on most anyone right off the bat. So take that into consideration. Now, this is Botanicum. This is a Marie Troll book here. There's a bunch of these, so this isn't some oddity. $48, 34 bids. It's from 2018. These are imported to, say, museum shops, like in a city, town, or regional museum you'll find these at. A lot of the bookstores have them. They do show up online. I would buy this one even if it had a few pages colored in it, just truthfully. Indians coloring book. Whitman again, 1958. Again, watch out for the size. The bigger the size, the better they are. This is a 15-cent cover, so usually the lower the price on the cover, the better it is for the most part. $50 on that one. Now, in my Facebook group, somebody had shown some photos of United Airlines coloring book, And this is just a perfect example. This one went for 50. So you list it up for 99. Something that I would do, I probably would do the exact same thing. Maybe not quite that high, but that's still a good return. And then they got 50 bucks out of it. It's got a little corner chip or corner break on the top of it, as you can see. They still sell. So anyway, FYI. National Geographic. Most companies have some form of coloring book, at least the newer ones. Animal-related ones always sell. Fantasy, floral, things like that sell. They sold 5 of these. There's one left. $46 a piece they sold 5 of these at. More kids-related. Joan Walsh, England. She did kids' books and things like that, too. And there's a whole line of these character-related items here. Some are self-published, so keep that in mind, too. You'll run into some that are, just published by just some random person, believe it or not. Now, these are like new. As long as they're not colored in, I usually am happy with them. 50 bucks on this one. Monster Gallery. Now, you'll find various ones from various different companies. Troubadour Press is a known one too. This is 70s. They did a lot of funky stuff back then, and if I'm not mistaken, they actually produced some of the blacklight posters, if I'm not mistaken, and the velvet ones you colored. 1973, 45 bucks. Pretty decent one. The Phantom of the Opera, it looks like right there. Next one here, Captain Marvel coloring book. Now, the old ones usually go for very good money, 240 bucks basically, and it's missing the whole top corner, top left corner, spine issues and such forth. It's got some damage here and there. It's been colored in as well. This one wasn't colored in, no damage. This could have been a $500 book, so just depends. Now, these don't show up, so that's why this one would be rare. There's a lot of tie-ins with these kind of items, as I said, with movie-related and comic book. We're going to show you some more comic book ones here in a few moments, though. Next one here is Greer Garson. This is an archive copy, meaning it was owned by the actual company. And sometimes they own a bunch of these, and then they whittle down their inventory, or the company closes or something, and then they go up for auction. So sometimes they'll show up with, stampings from the company. Other times they'll just be in mint condition and shown up in a warehouse lot. Some of these didn't sell back then. They weren't big movers. So sometimes a case of something may show up in a printer's attic or something. 205 on this one. Milton the Monster, oddball comic book. If I'm not mistaken, it was maybe a TV cartoon for a very little while. If I'm not mistaken as well, there's some Dell 4-color series that hit on this. So this is, again, Whitman, 225. But this is a scarce topic, so... Next one, Dolly Parton, 130 bucks. They made them for pretty much any singing performer you could imagine. There's some Beatles ones as well, too. So these usually sell very well. Multi-category interest, coloring book collectors, paper collectors, Dolly Parton collectors, Western, the whole works. There's a bunch of areas that people would collect these in. Next one's a 1933 Mickey and Minnie. Now, I haven't seen this one before. This is a large format. It's early for Disney. So, there's the Roman numerals again. Walt Disney Enterprises is one of the earliest names Disney signed stuff as the copyright on, so pretty much anything that says Enterprise is usually worth something. 125 on this one with wear and issues. Disneyland, it's basically the Haunted Mansion on the cover. Anything Haunted Mansion and vintage usually sells well. There's some Haunted Mansion LP records that are the soundtrack. I always do very well. Those are like 50 bucks. All of the Haunted Mansion items that are vintage go very well. 31 bids, $114 on this one. Next one, the Banana Splits, $200 basically. They had records out. It was actually like a faux music group of characters and costumes. They do very well. Say in 77, 78, this was still running as reruns on Saturday morning cartoons still. I don't remember if it was like a Hanna-Barbera comedy hour or something, but it was still on. Next one here is a Superman coloring book from 1940. Southfield, again, it's a known company. And I touched on other Superman items. If you click right up here, you'll see another video that I actually did on newspaper comics, which actually sell very well. Some of those go much higher than these even, so they just don't show up as often as you would find a coloring book. But this one went for $86.75. There's many versions of these. There's even scrapbooks with the same similar cover on them that were out in the same time frame, so... Next one's a Mighty Mouse, $71.99. Terry Toons. This one wouldn't show up very often. This is a large format. It's smaller amounts of pages in these when they're usually larger. But they're like, again, the size of a Big Life magazine. Next one's a Hugh O'Brien piece. It's Wyatt Earp. He was actually Wyatt Earp on the TV show. There's tons of tie-ins for all these Western shows. This is a very popular one. I've had many comics from this actual one, a few toys and other items like that. Comic books from Westerns always go very well. Now, I had a question on Western items in my Patreon group, and I'm going to touch on that in another Patreon video, but Western stuff sells, just like the Dolly Parton would be tied into the Western genre as well, too. Next one here is a Transformers. Pretty much anything Transformers sells. And again, this is the large size format. 17 by 22 is this one here. That's about the size of a Life magazine. So again, if they haven't been colored in, it's always better. This one has a page that was colored in. It still went for basically 75 bucks. So very good items. Next one here is an ElfQuest. Now, ElfQuest was a small minor published comic book at one time, and they've been branched out from there. They've gotten like a resurgence of popularity. They've been republished and things like that as well, too. But this is an original one, so this one's fairly rare. They were minor comic book lines back in the day, but nowadays they're pretty tough to get any of them. So 48 bucks on this one. Just a couple other comments on coloring books. Like some of the Star Wars ones aren't worth a ton of money because of how many they made. Now, if you found like a black hole or an alien one, you know, those go for some good money. So if you research like a Star Wars coloring book, you're going to find them online because there were a lot of them made. There's a bunch of varieties. So, and some varieties of some of these coloring books may not sell as well as other ones. So if you're researching them, just be sure you're comparing apples to apples. Because some of these, again, are scarce issues. They only release in certain areas. Some of them could have been promotional or sold by a specific store. Just like some of the Star Wars action playsets and things like that were only sold, say, through JCPenney's, like the Cantina playset. There are specific items that were only sold through specific store lines. That's why we have the large snaggletooth from that specific set. So just keep that in mind on some of these items. Well, there you go. There's some more items that we look for. Hopefully that gave you some ideas and some thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.